Hello game fans and welcome back to the Steam Chamber. Now it's been a little while since our last video because of various reasons. I've been a little bit busy, there's been some things going on. However, I've been meaning to put out a video on Defiance for quite a while now. I was looking at making it a bit of a series, but I've decided in the meantime I'm going to do an episode just looking at the episode missions. Now, for those of you that don't know, Defiance is a retail non-subscription MMO which also has a sci-fi TV series. So the series is running concurrently with the game. The game gets updated fairly regularly, as it's just adding some DLC very soon as well. And the series is a standard sci-fi series. I think it was a 13-episode run, I could be mistaken. And this first season has just been finished, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity to take a look back at the first season and how it tied in with the game. Now, the series has already been picked up for at least a second series, possibly a third. And they've said from the start that things that happen in the series will affect the game, and things that happen in the game will affect the series. Now, on the things that happen in the game affecting the series side of things, nothing much has really happened this season, but they pretty much said early on that it had been decided beforehand what was going to happen in Season 1, and they'd pretty much had it all written out and planned from quite early on. So that hasn't really happened this season. I think there was one competition where the winner would get their character's avatar in the background somewhere. I'm not quite sure of that. I think it was on a wanted poster or something along those lines. But that's pretty much the only thing that's happened in terms of the game crossing over to the series so far. However, there has been things that have happened in the series that have affected the game, and that comes in the form of episode missions. And then, of course, there is the general data logs of stuff that provide a bit of background information, which includes some background information for some of the characters. So if you watched the last episode of the season, there was a character called Black Jonah, and this character is actually referenced in the game a couple of times in some data logs, and he is basically a sort of spec ops sort of fixer for the Earth Republic. Now, getting back to the episode missions, there have been 5 episode missions this season, and the Tryon Worlds gave everyone an opportunity to replay them a while ago. Now, what originally was happening is every couple of weeks there was a new episode mission, but when they finished at the end of the season, the actual TV season, Tryon Worlds decided to give a couple of weeks where you could play all of the missions, all of the episode missions over again. So a couple of them are pretty basic, sort of go and collect data logs and such, and I'm going to be focusing on the other 2 or 3 that are a little bit more in depth. There are 2 that are quite in depth. There's a third that's got a little bit more going on, and the other 2 are pretty much very basic, and they're not really worth showing. But I'll show this video as mainly highlights from the main 2, the 2 beefier ones, and both of them end up giving you a outfit. Actually, I think the first one gives you 2 outfits. I think the second one actually gives you a weapon. They generally, the 2 bigger ones are made up of several parts, 4 or 5 mini missions making up a greater mission. And I think the first one, it gives you a couple of outfits and a couple of other things. I think the second one gives you a couple of weapons, a couple of mods, and then it gives you a final, quite a decent assault rifle. Now, they were really interesting actually, because it gave you an opportunity to get a bit more from the series. If you watch the series, I mean, they were great fun even if you don't watch the series, but if you do, they're great because it gives you just a little bit more depth. So you encounter characters from the show such as Nolan and Orissa, the main characters of the show, and it was always sort of a given that they were going to feature in the game. Their missions, when you interact with them, it's generally before the events of the TV show. It's before they've gone east to go to Defiance. It's when they're still out west in the San Francisco Bay Area. and it's set a little bit before the start of the TV show. The second of the missions is set about midway through the series. So early on in the series, there is an episode in which an Erathian woman is using hormones from hellbugs to assassinate people that have wronged her family. Now, this is something that makes its way into the game. There are a few missions scattered about where you're dealing with hellbugs that are attacking people, and you find hellbug pheromones, and there's a couple of missions where you encounter Earth Republic forces using this technique. And when you do the actual episode mission and you go to attack a rogue group of Earth Republic soldiers who are using this technique, you encounter Rin. And Rin is the character from the series who first used this style of attacks in the episode. Now, in the end of the episode, she got away. She saved Nolan's life, so he ends up really letting her go. And she obviously makes her way out west, and that's where you interact with her in a couple of these episode missions, and you team up with her in order to take out these rogue Earth Rep soldiers, who are all being led by a general. So it's really nice because it gives you actually, there are some references to Nolan, and there are a few little slight references that you wouldn't have necessarily understood if you hadn't seen the series, which is quite nice. Adds a bit more depth to the game. Also, it's adding more depth to the series at the same time. Now, once I'm not going to give away obviously there are spoilers here, and I will put a warning in the description, but it's sort of a given if I'm talking about specific missions that there are going to be some spoilers. I don't want to give away too much about the final episode of the series, just in case you haven't watched it, but in the last 2 episodes you do encounter Rin in the TV show again. And in the first thing, pretty much one of the first things she says when she comes back into the series is that she'd heard some things about Nolan out west. So they're referencing in the TV series that she's been out into the areas that the game is set in, which is really nice. And also the things she's heard about Nolan are also referenced in the episode missions. There's an episode, this is talking about Nolan's past, and there's an episode in the TV series that looks at Nolan's past. And as a result, there's also an episode mission where we're looking at Nolan's past, and we're looking at things he's done and ways of discrediting him. Now, apart from the episode missions, there are other little tie-ins. There are sieges and such. So there was an episode in which a plague seized the town of Defiance and the general area. Now, in the lead up to this, they started adding a couple of missions where you encounter random infected people and they attack you, and there was a few sieges, there were a few little random encounters, and there were a few missions as well. And there was also an update that added Volge attacks as well, and there were quite a few of these little events that they added that tied in with the series. Not quite as directly as the episode missions, but a way of sort of tying the universes together, which was a really nice idea. Now, as I say, there hasn't been anything really much that has gone the other way. However, they have promised it for next season. I'm not quite sure how it's going to happen, but I know one thing that is going to happen is there is a character that features quite heavily in a lot of the episode missions, as well as a few of the main missions, and that is an alien character. I'm not going to mention him too much. You'll see him in the video, obviously, and he will apparently be popping up in the series. Now, they haven't released any info about anybody else popping up in the series from the game. However, there's a few characters that I've encountered along the way that I can't help but think will. One of them is the Lawkeeper at the Iron Ranch. He's got a bit of a history with Nolan, and he's another member of the Defiant Few who ended the war along with Nolan, and it really wouldn't surprise me if he popped up in the series. And they've also promised at least one more character that's going to be coming from the series into the game. Now, I've got a pretty good idea judging by the final episode, I've got a pretty good idea of who that character might be. A female character. Again, just in case you are watching it and you haven't watched the final episode, I won't mention who. However, if you have seen the final episode, I think it'll be fairly clear that there's a character that might go wandering. So that remains to be seen. However, as far as the first season episode missions have gone, I've been fairly impressed. It's been really nice. It's a nice tie-in with the series and the game. It brings a little something extra to both of them. It's really nice, and it feels like you're in on something that other people aren't. The game has just generally been really good at providing a bit of extra depth for the series, and just a great amount of background knowledge. Just the stuff that you'll know about the series from the game that you just wouldn't know otherwise. Sort of a bit of background information about the Votan race and how they came to be at Earth and why, and how exactly things happened, and why the war happened, and why there are certain animosities between certain races and religions. And it's really nice to add something more to a series and just get that little bit, that more exposition without loads of long drawn out exposition. Anyway, I'm hoping to do more of these videos in the future, and I'm also hoping to make video updates and uploads a little bit more regular again, as things have been a bit lax, so do expect at least a couple of 3 videos every week now. Hopefully there'll be someone else doing some videos with me in the next few days. I'm just going to twist his arm enough in order to get him to try out doing the voiceovers. But anyway, thank you again as always for watching. If you enjoyed the video, which I know is a little bit long, but if you did enjoy it, please do like, comment and subscribe, as it really does help out and it gives me a reason to keep making these things. And also please do leave a comment if you have any feedback, and if there's anything you'd like to see, especially in terms of these regular sort of videos that I'd like to be making about Defiance. And also stay tuned for a new Greenlight highlights episode in the next day or so. Thank you again. See you soon.